There are actually two pressures. One, there's the pressure to get the long-term Social Security budget into balance. The second pressure is that the government's budget as a whole is way out of balance. We're essentially collecting about $20,000 in taxes per household, but we're spending about $30,000 at the federal level. So there's a huge imbalance in the federal budget, and there's a moderate imbalance in Social Security, which is a long-term imbalance. The reason that the two issues have come together at the same time is that many people feel like Social Security reform is something we can tackle now, that the long-term issue in many ways needs to be addressed at the same time we're trying to address these short-term issues. Interestingly enough, a number of people who have been serving on these various commissions dealing with the debt feel like Social Security reform may be one of the easier reforms to enact, in the following sense. The changes that would be implemented in Social Security would generally take place over a significant period of time. So for instance, very gradual increases in the retirement age might not hit anybody for another 10 or 20 years. Increases in taxes might hit a little bit sooner. But the feeling is that these can be implemented over a period of time in a reasonable fashion. Think of the budget as one big pie and then divide it up into pieces. Social Security is a very big piece of the pie. Healthcare is an even bigger piece. Then we have defense, and we have everything else. So Social Security is such a large piece of the pie, it's hard to deal with the budget without actually addressing some of the Social Security issues. One is people have been living a lot longer. So if they retire for a lot longer, that has a lot of implications, not just for Social Security benefit payments, but for revenues. So if I retire a year earlier than I otherwise planned, it's not just that I might receive, say $20,000 or $30,000 in Social Security benefits, but I might start paying $15,000 or $20,000 less in taxes. We're scheduled to have about a third of the adult population on Social Security, not all retired, but about a third receiving Social Security. Is that many people retire? It really reduces the amount of production and output in the economy, and it reduces the amount of income tax revenues we have to support other programs. I think it also threatens their own well-being, that many people are prepared for retirement at 62, 63, and 65. They're not prepared for the fact that for a typical couple, one or the other of them is liable to make it to 90 or so, and perhaps beyond. And costs are going to go up over that period of time, and they're not prepared for this retirement 25, 30 years from now. And I think that's dangerous for their own well-being. If we implement it gradually, we'll do it in a much more rational manner. People can plan better for their future retirements. We can actually be much more fair in the way that we try to implement reform, as opposed to sort of suddenly deciding we're going to increase, say, the retirement age by 2 years for somebody who retires tomorrow, as opposed to somebody who retires today, or that we're going to suddenly raise the amount of wages that are subject to tax, or a whole variety of other reforms in Social Security. The more gradually we can implement these Social Security reforms, the better it is. The reforms that they implemented were several, or that they proposed were several. They suggested increasing the amount of wages subject to Social Security tax. It turns out that in the past we've had up to 90% of wages subject to Social Security tax, but that has eroded over time. They want to move that back towards the 90% level. That's a significant way of reducing the deficit. They have actually proposed to cut back on the extent to which employee benefits are not subject to tax. That's also an erosion of the tax base that they want to deal with. They have suggested gradually increasing the retirement age. Actually, in this particular case, the increase in retirement age they suggest is less than the increase in life expectancy. That is, crudely speaking, by the time the retirement age would go up 2 years under the proposal, people would be expected to live about 3 years longer. Right now, as people live longer and longer, they get more and more years of Social Security benefits. And that has an impact on the solvency of the Social Security system. They also suggested a number of benefit enhancements They suggested when people reach a significantly older age that there be a bump up to deal with some of the problems of old age. They also suggested a minimum benefit especially for longer term workers that would reduce the number of elderly in poverty or near poverty. They've also suggested that one adjust what is called the COLA, the cost of living adjustment, to reflect a better measure of what they believe to be a better measure of inflation. The current elderly, in many ways, have almost no change in their benefits. There's one slight difference in the sense that the cost of living adjustment would be slightly less because it's going to better reflect a measure of inflation. But all the other changes, changes in retirement ages and changes in tax, income subject to tax, and so on and so forth, for the most part, doesn't affect them. So, literally speaking, grandfathers are grandfathered. Now, the middle-aged is a different story. For the middle-aged, the question is, okay, their rate of growth of benefits is going to be slightly less. Some of them will see some slight tax increases, but their alternative is that they have a system that's out of balance, so they're liable to take some hit down the road anyway. And in terms of the larger budget issue, which is also being addressed, they're facing huge increases in just paying taxes to support nothing more than interest payments on the debt. So middle-aged do have a lot at stake in these reforms, but they have a lot at stake in terms of the losses that they're going to incur if we keep these systems going as they are now. They're so imbalanced that they really threaten their well-being and the well-being of their children.